Trade organizations, 150 member states, have been moving in fits for the 5 years to restart stalled negotiations on a free trade agreement worth billions of dollars to the world economy. The so-called Doha round of global talks is meant to help developing nations and boost trade by breaking down barriers to commerce in goods and services. Cuts in rich countries, agriculture subsidies, which would benefit farmers in poorer nations, have proved hard to negotiate, prompting fears the round may end in failure. Bloomberg's Catherine Yang asked Reuben Mondejar, director of the Global Business Management Program at City University of Hong Kong, about the chances of the Doha talks being revived.
I think the best word to describe it is it's on a knife edge. But personally, I think I'm optimistic on it for 2 reasons. The first reason is the positions of the European Union and the United States are now closer than ever before. So in other words, there's less tension that they are creating, because really the Doha round stalled because the gap between the position of the EU and US together vis-a-vis the developing countries, Brazil, India, China, were too far apart. Okay, that's the first reason. The second reason is the result of the APEC meeting in November and the ASEAN meeting in January resulted in kind of a consensus between China being the primary agent, China and the rest of the members of the APEC and ASEAN, that it would be better for them to have a multilateral agreement going as a first choice, and only if that fails that they should have the bilaterals backed up by regional trade agreements later.
But as you say, it is on a knife edge, and you're still remaining optimistic despite the fact that President Bush is going to lose his fast-track authority in, say, the next 4 months?
Well, I think that is precisely the pressure why I'm optimistic, because the fact that it's expiring will make people work double time so that they can get something going before June 30 comes, which is when the authority for President Bush expires.
So what do you think they can do in say, the next 4 months? What sort of a result are we going to see? Okay,
so the formula that people have been talking about now, especially in the 2 meetings of APEC and ASEAN, was that China, first of all, agrees to let India come on board. So that changes the whole picture. Because if India is not on board, then like instead of 70% global economy we are talking about, it becomes like 55%. And so then with India on board, then the weight is really very, very big. And then secondly, they realize that ASEAN and APEC together, so you're talking here actually of about 25 countries, together they will have a significant weight. Therefore, China being kind of the reluctant superpower that it is coming to be. So it's going to really pull a lot of weight.
But do the ministers really recognize that a global treaty is better than bilateral treaties? Because we've seen bilateral agreements flourishing as the global trade talks have stalled.
Yeah. You know, there's a dictum that we have to remember. Sometimes the best is the enemy of the good. So if you aspire so much for the best, and it becomes so unrealistic. So I think they would rather that they have something going rather than nothing at all. So that's why the bilaterals have been going on, not just because of the Doha round. It has been going on for the past 15 years. So, and there have been many bilaterals already going on. But of course they realize that the bilaterals could be an obstacle to a smooth-flowing multilateral agreement. So they're quite cautious about that. But if they see that U.S. is not going to give in, the EU is not going to give in, then okay, we better go to the bilateral talks. But that's not what is happening now. So the U.S. has agreed to reduce the subsidies. EU has agreed to up 10 percentage points, so from 39 to like now 49, and the demand of the developing countries is 51%, so it's very close.
We have about a minute to go. What is the position when it comes to the BRIC economies? How do you see the growth of the so-called BRIC economies, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, affecting trade and growth in the Southeast Asian economies?
Well, you have to look at it in 2 ways. One is the short term and one is the long term. the short term, they may have advantage, but in the longer term, it's better that they are in with the whole world so that they have all these agreements. Now, the BRIC economies, you see, because you cannot divide economics from politics, and therefore, you know, you have politicians who want to win, and therefore, if they don't have this agreement and they want to project their own, like, superiority and their own weight in international trade negotiations, so they have to project that in order to win political points. But, you know, if it's really for the good of the country, you know, WTO, all that means that we are trying to reduce tariffs. We're making, like, the free flow of goods, not only products, but also services. And that's coming very, very quickly. You know, movie stars, singers, you know, can really cross continents without any like, barrier.
That was Professor Reuben Mondejar from SUNY University of Hong Kong speaking with Bloomberg's Catherine Yang. Coming up, just...